Except this isn't a test, this is the actual thing. Okay, reminder, next time I need to change the title before creating the live. All right, forgot to do that. Okay. All right. Okay. Anthony is here on YouTube. Okay. This level of technology really is cool. Check this out. There's Anthony's comment, and there's my lovely bride. Loud and clear. Love the snowflake platter. All right, very cool. Very cool. This is so stinking cool. All right, one awesome turner just joined. What's going on, Jeff? For those that don't know, Jeff Peters is sometimes now my booth babe, which does not say a lot for the quality of the physical appearance of the workers in the booth, but whatever. It works out just fine. All right, let's get things going. Good afternoon. It is 2:02 Central Time, and we are here. Welcome to Monday Methods. This is something that I've been thinking about doing for a while now. I just had the opportunity over this past week and weekend to upgrade my general technology. I did not plan on it, but I was required to. And when I did that, when I updated my vMix subscription and whatnot, I discovered that there were an enormous amount of really cool features that I was not aware of, that I was not utilizing, and that I figured out I really needed to start utilizing some of this stuff. The other thing is I recently became a Chromacraft dealer. So as some of you know, Hampshire Sheen has gone out of business. Martin needed to go in a different direction, which is fine. It is what it is. You know, he made some business decisions that were best for him, and the Hampshire Sheen product line, which was a wonderful product line, is now not available anymore. I'm hopeful that Martin will eventually put something back together again, because he had some great products. But because I had a really big hole in my product line, I reached out to Chromacraft USA. I hadn't worked with them much before. We've been friendly, but I've never carried their line before. And I kind of decided, well, maybe now might be the time to approach them and see about working together, because it really is a great product line. Dyes and gilding creams and stencils and finishing products and lions and tigers and bears, oh my. And it's just a really cool... high quality product line, and I've had it here for about 2 weeks now, just playing with the products myself and figuring some things out, and decided, you know what, I need to get back on and do lives. I did a bunch of lives through 2020 and 2021, possibly into 2022. It was Woodturning Wednesday, and it started because of COVID. I normally teach cutting board classes or wood turning classes here locally on Tuesday and Wednesday nights, so I didn't want to add another live back on Wednesday, so we're going to go with Monday. I'm going to try to do this every Monday, at least a little live, a little project, a little product demonstration every week. I'm going to get back to working the newsletters. So if you're subscribed to the newsletter at The Walnut Log, walnutlog.com, that would be great. If you're not subscribed, you can go over to walnutlog.com and get subscribed to the email list, and I will send out emails with reminders and topic notifications. And my wife just came out and she's making a funny face, so hold on a second. Yeah, it's part of the green screen. I'm not worried about that. Yeah, my over here, my green screen is a little bubbly, and I think that's because my green screen is a little dirty. It's really a green screen. Let me show you that. go to, oh, hey Tom, what's going on? Tom's here. All right, so there's really a green screen hanging behind me, and I think it's, no, I know, I can see it. I know it's very dirty. And that's just fine. Anyway, so I'm also using this first session as a technology test with some of these new features to vMix. I'm actually streaming live to both Facebook and YouTube at the same time, but I'm able to use an application within the software that allows me to see the chats from both YouTube and Facebook at the same time. And as I'm doing that, I can grab comments and throw them up into the live. All right, so that was me up adding that comment from Anthony, the nor'easter. And yeah, that's the nor'easter. That's what it looks like. That's what a nor'easter looks like when it's on video. A very small nor'easter. Anyway, so we're playing with some technology. There's some other cool things that I have the ability to utilize that I'm really looking forward to playing with. And right now we're just gonna have some fun and go from there. Oh, hey, little Tony's here. Can everybody see Tony? Yeah, the invisible man right there, Tony. Good job. You don't have a profile picture. You are actually the invisible man. Catch me or Tony live and in person at some point if you want to know the story about Invisible Tony. Oh, and then Renan had a good comment. Yeah, this comment sharing thing is really cool. Anyway, so yeah. We're gonna do a couple of projects. We're gonna have a little fun. I'm going to talk specifically about the Chromacraft product line, just because it's new, it's exciting. It's available on my website, www.thewalnutlog.com, and it's available for purchase right now. So if you want to head over there at some point in the near future, I would appreciate it. Really looking forward to bringing these products to my customers, taking them to shows. Just as a brief calendar discussion, I'm going to have a booth at the Tennessee Symposium at the end of January. I'll also have a booth at the Florida Symposium, which is in mid-February. I'm currently scheduled to be a vendor and a demonstrator at Turn On Chicago, which is in the summer, July something, and I'm going to also be a vendor and demonstrator at the Segmented Symposium, which will also be in Chicago this year, and that one is held in mid-late September. So those are the events that and I'll be a vendor at AAW because I'm always a vendor at AAW, and that's a wonderful thing. I need to get my demonstrator application into SWAT. At the very least, I know I will be a demonstrator at the Ornamental Symposium, which is held in conjunction with SWAT, and that's, if you're not familiar, that one's in Waco, Texas in August. I don't know why it is hot as hell in Waco in August, but people like Tony apparently seem to like that. And but that's what I've got going on for next year. I'm also doing a whole bunch of club demos, both in person and virtual IRDs. I do some IRD classes, some online physical classes. Real turning in real time just happens to be virtual. I do these for the folk school. This weekend, if you have any interest and absolutely nothing better to do, this weekend I am doing a basket illusion class Saturday and Sunday through the folk school. You can go to folkschool.org and check out their course catalog and sign up for that if you have any interest in an actual hands-on live virtual all-day, 2-day class on this weekend, going over the basket illusion process start to finish. It's a lot of fun. It is something that I've done. I've done this class several times, and we've had a lot of good response from that. A lot of good projects coming out of it that the students had the ability to actually work with me in real time and make these projects, and it's really cool. So basically, if you have the ability to have a Zoom session somewhere near your lathe, even if it's just through a cell phone, that's good enough. You can see what I'm doing, I can see what you're doing, and we can make a really cool project. Anyway, all right, so moving forward, let's start talking about some products. I've got the Chromacraft products right there, so let's... oh, okay, yeah, Guy just jumped in and he always has the right answers, so Turn On Chicago is late July. It's on my calendar. I know it's there, but it's late July into the first couple of days of August, and it should be a really good show. Done that one a number of times. I don't want that one. I want the overhead. All right, so let's do this. Okay, so we are here at the lathe. I've got a piece set up. I've actually got 3 forms turned and ready to roll that I want to do some really cool stuff. Briefly about the products. Chromacraft USA, this is the Nick Agar line of wood dyes. There are 15 different colors. They are alcohol based, fast drying, super vibrant colors. I'm just reading off of this. And because of what they are actually substantially more fade resistant, substantially more UV stable than all of the other dyes that are out there, all of the other alcohol-based dyes that are out there. There is a secret ingredient, I'm sure. They won't tell me what it is, and that's fine. But I am really enjoying working with these colors. They are able to be brushed on, wiped on, airbrushed on. You can use an atomizer blowpipe if you don't have an entire airbrush system. You can turn your shop compressor into an airbrush. We can talk about that and the components that you might want to pursue for doing something like that. There's a lot of ways to get color, dye, whatever, onto a piece of wood in order to do some really cool things. Today we're going to be focusing on Christmas projects, simply because I need more Christmas inventory. And the first one we'll do is something like this. It's a snowflake plate. I hear often, especially from my lower experienced students, that they're not able to do some of the things that I can do, and they don't have artistic ability or things of that nature, and that's simply not true. A little understanding of color, a little understanding of the application of some of these products out there, and the utilization of stencils. This is all stencil work. It's not hand work. It's stencil work, and stencils are a tool. They're a tool that's been available for hundreds and hundreds of years to allow us to do really cool stuff without having to rely on some type of artistic talent or drawing skill or things of that nature. And there's an enormous amount of things that you can do with just a single pack of stencils, whether you're using the positive stencil for this particular process that I'm showing here, or the negative stencil for this particular process with different colors in order to pull off that effect. That there's lots of things that you can do without a lot of artistic skill, as long as you understand how to use the products and work with the types of things that you can do. That really didn't make a whole lot of sense, but whatever. It's my first Monday method, and I'm tired, and there you go. Anyway, so I've got, I think I've got 10 different Chromacraft stencil sets that's got the positive stencil and the negative stencils, and you can, if you're careful, you can remove these and clean them off and reuse them on a couple of different projects without ruining anything. So you really do get a fair amount of use out of each set. You can use them with dyes, you can use them with paints, you can use them with reactive metallic paints. I've done that a number of times on a variety of projects, and it gives you a very high impact finished project without a lot of high impact time, energy, or skill. And like I said, they're a tool. People have been using stencils for centuries in order to get the ability to make some really cool stuff and reproduce designs over a long period of time or over a large surface area, whether it's on a decorative plate like I'm doing here, or whether it's a border around a wall in a room in your house. There are a number of things, that you can do. I will specifically be using the Snowflake stencils. Each stencil pack comes with 2 sheets, and I need to find my open sheet of Snowflake stencils. I knew I forgot something, and I don't remember where I put it. All right, it is officially not behind the green curtain. So let's check over here. And this is the best part about doing a live virtual, is if I forgot to set something up, it's probably just quote over here. And there's my stencils. I am happy. Oh, you can also get blank stencils. So if you have a stencil cutter like a Cricut or a Cameo Silhouette, you can download patterns and print your own. So this is, I've used most of the first sheet in order to do my practice pieces, and this is the second sheet. It's got 4 smalls, 3 slightly bigger, 2 even bigger than that, and 2 large sizes. And again, you can use the negative, which is the center, or you can use the window, which is the part that is left after you utilize that center section. If I'm using the window, I normally don't worry about the little center dots. It gets very difficult to reposition those little bitty doots in a place where it becomes beneficial. But like I said, with just a little color understanding, a little creativity, a little practice with some airbrush or whatever your preferred application technique is, and you can do a lot of really cool stuff without spending a lot of time, without spending a lot of money, just by utilizing something like these stencils. So the first thing that we're going to do is not do stencils. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the wood prep and whatnot. So let me get over to the long shot. All right, so here we are. Let's reposition that camera just a little bit. Everybody hang on. Whee! All right, so I've got a maple platter or shallow bowl, whatever you want to call it. It is turned, it is sanded to, I went up to 400 grit just because I wanted to. 220 to 320 is what I normally sand to. I just had the ability to sand up to 400 grit, and that gives me a really nice surface. The big thing that you want to pay attention to whenever you're doing color work of any kind, unless you're applying a solid paint, like an actual acrylic paint, you really don't want to leave flaws, okay? Quite simply put, the color will enhance the flaws that you leave, and that is not good. That's bad. That's very bad. Because if you did a not super job of turning, if you've got tool marks or tear out, if you did a not super job of sanding, you've got streaks and torn fibers and whatnot. Anytime you put a color on, and it doesn't matter what the color is, if it's a translucent type color like a dye or an ink or something of that manner, if you have flaws, the coloring agent is actually going to highlight that. Same goes for finishing products. If you try to apply a reasonable quality finish to a not super surface, you're going to have the enhanced flaws showing up. And the only way you can avoid that is if you use a painting product like metallic acrylic paint or regular acrylic paint, or something along the lines of the reactive metallic paints that I like to use for some of my antique looking pieces. Now the other thing I did not bring over is the roll of paper towels. I believe that's over there as well. So let's grab that, the paint palette, because the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to texture the rim, which will allow me to use the chroma gilt later. Now I could fire up the dust or the compressor, and I could use my compressed air hose to get rid of the dust. I could use a tack cloth, or I could simply use a paper towel with the piece running. Paper towel has a very light static charge naturally, and it will attract and hold that sanding dust that was left on the surface. Okay, you can kind of see a little discoloration there on the paper towel simply from that sanding dust. So now I've got a really nice surface on which to work. Quick check the chat. Oh, Mary Alice is here. Mary Alice jumped in. Hi, Mary Alice. There she is. Woohoo. Mary Alice jumped in. Good to have you here. Mary Alice, how is the repair work, the body repair, the knee modification. It was a knee, right? You got your knee replaced. How is your healing process going? All right, so while Mary Alice is getting ready to tell us all about her surgery, I'm going to get things lined up. I currently do not have texturing tools in stock, but that's okay because you can buy them at a number of places. You can buy them off Amazon. You can buy them from a number of different suppliers across the country, across the globe. I'm specifically going to be working with my Sorby texturing tools just because that's what I like. I've got a pair of small ones. I'm not going to do a ton of texture work, but I want to get a little detail on that rim before I add any color, simply because it's going to allow me to enhance things even more. When I'm working with texturing tools, whether it's the large or small Sorby tools, I want to run my lathe at about 500 RPM. The instructions for the small says run it at the 500 RPM range. The instructions for the large actually says run it at 900 RPM. I feel that is much, much too fast for what we're trying to do, and I run them both at 500 RPM. Now, if you've taken any coloring, texturing classes with me before, you know that I tell you, if you have the small set, to flip the cutter over from how it comes straight out of the package. These cutters have a bevel. Let's go to the overhead. These cutters have a bevel on one side, right? And I want that bevel on these cutters to be on the opposite side as the brass screw. And the reason is, if I'm using these for texture, not for long spiraling, but if I'm using them for texture, I want that bevel on the left-hand side. If the bevel and the screw are both on the left-hand side, the screw gets in the way, but it will also unscrew during the process. When it unscrews, it will eventually fall. And as you can see, there's a lot of shavings down. There's a great big pile of shavings down there that brass screw is inevitably going to fall into. And because it's brass, a magnet on a stick is not going to help you. So you're going to have to crawl around in the shavings under your lathe to find that brass screw, and it's not a fun time. How do I know? Because I've done it. I've researched this thoroughly. Please, please do not do that. Easiest way to fix that is to flip the cutter over from how it comes in the package. So the bevel is on the left-hand side, the brass thread knob is on the right-hand side. This does not get in my way when I want to change the orientation of my tool, and as long as I'm working in the right orientation, that screw is not going to unwind. It will actually tighten. Okay. All right, so Mary Alice had computer-assisted surgery, and that apparently is amazing, and that's awesome. I'd like to talk to you about that. My mom had the surgery done a number of years ago, and it was definitely not computer-aided. She ended up doing very well because she did the therapy that was suggested or recommended. So just would be interested in a conversation about the differences between what you did and what my mom experienced back in the day. You know, I have no idea if I'm going to need the surgery, but you never know. And sometimes just having a little more information is a good thing. All right, so I'm going to take my Sorby texturing tool. I'm going to dial in my lathe speed to 500 RPM. I need to make sure that there is enough room between the surface of the piece and the tool rest. I'll actually get Mini-Me out of the way so you have an unobstructed view. Now, because of the slight angle of the camera, this might be a little bit skewed. I'm holding the tool straight up and down north and south, and I am dead on perpendicular to that surface. I'm going to do 2 or 3 patterns on the surface. The only issue that I might have is because this is already turned down thin. It's about 1/4 inch thick at the rim. I might get some additional chatter or squealing, and if I do, I may kick my index finger on my top hand, my left hand, behind the piece to provide support against that spinning surface. I'm going to see how it sounds and feels first. I'm going to press and hold, and I'm going to hold until I feel this is done. I'm going to turn my mic off for just a moment. That is very, very loud. Okay, all right. I need to remember to turn the microphone off when we go and do texture. You can't see it as well as I can, but I did two textures. The first one, the tool was held pretty much straight up and down, north and south. I pressed and held until the pattern evolved and embossed itself on that surface. And then on the second pattern, I rotated the tool not quite 45 degrees, just again pressed and held and held and held until that pattern developed. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to take a point tool, and I've got the Carter & Son Mike Mahoney detailer. This is simply a point tool. It's got a skewed angle so the sharp point sticks out from the end of the tool, and that will allow me to create a series of lines framing my two different textures. So I'm going to make 3 lines, one in between the two textures and then one on either outside section. Very light pressure. I'm not going super deep. I want it to highlight. Okay. And I think we're going to use the liming wax on this one. I don't think we're going to do the chroma gilt first. We'll do that on the second one. Morocco blue techniques just kicked in, and you can kind of see that pattern up here. And by adding those 3 lines, it really frames it nicely, really makes it stand out. All right, so the next thing that I want to do before I get going is I want to come down here to that pile of shavings, and I want to grab a handful, and I simply want to use this material to burnish that rim. I don't want to use sandpaper. If I use sandpaper, that is going to dull down everything that I just spent time doing. It'll dull down my texture. If I grab a handful of my own industrial waste, my own shavings, and I can use that to get rid of the torn fibers, any hanging chads or things of that nature, doing it on the outside of that rim as well. It's just going to allow me to really clean up that texture nicely without dulling it down. And because I'm planning on doing a liming wax here and then chroma gilt on at least one of the other pieces, I don't want to dull down any of that texture. I want the texture to be as sharp and as crisp as possible because it's going to give me the best result. All right. Okay, next thing I want to do is I want to protect the surface of my lathe. I don't want to deal with having to clean the lathe later. So I've just got a sheet of acrylic. I'll go to the overhead. It's just a 2-foot, 24-inch by 12-inch or 14-inch or whatever piece of 1/4-inch thick acrylic. I've got some paper towels taped on here. I can remove these and replace them easily. This will allow me to protect the bed of my lathe. I also have a piece of cardboard that I've cut a notch into, just like that. And that, when I'm ready, can slip over my spindle. It won't protect my chuck, and that's okay. The chuck can be clean. It will keep me from overspraying onto the controls of my headstock. That's the only part that I'm worried about keeping clean. I don't clean my chucks. I should clean my chucks at least a couple of times per year. Obviously I don't. It's okay. If they start jamming up, that's when I'll think about maybe cleaning them. But I want to protect things when I shift over to the airbrush, because for this first technique, we're going to do this plate. All right, so I want to apply my background color first. 2 different shades of blue. Some of the lightness is simply where I either did not spray super heavy or I allowed some of that natural wood to show through. And it just gives me a really nice effect. I'm not using a white or a gray. I'm using the wood itself and a little control from the airbrush. Let's go to that long shot because that's going to give you the best view. Now, I am setting my lathe speed low, about 120, 150 RPM. Whenever you're airbrushing at the lathe, you really want that airbrush, that lathe speed to be set at a low RPM. I want the piece to be moving because that will give me the best consistency in my spray, but I do not want it moving quickly. I want it moving slowly. The best way to do that is be able to have the ability to dial your speed down a lot. Now, first thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that my airbrush is clean. I'm sure you've seen them. I actually own two. They're little glass airbrush cleaning devices. And you can buy them from Harbor Freight or any airbrush company out there. You can get them on Amazon, get them lots of places. I have two of them. I use them sometimes. My biggest concern is they are glass and they may fall off the lathe and hit the concrete and shatter, and that renders them completely useless. So I've been using airbrush since the early 80s, and one of the easiest ways that I found to have a cleaning capture device for the overspray when I'm trying to clean out my brushes is simply an old milk jug that has had a section cut out and it's stuffed full of paper towels, and that will allow me to capture some of that airbrush overspray. So it'll go into the jug, it'll minimize the overspray, and it works really well. It works very well. All right. So first thing I want to do is I want to run a little denatured alcohol through my brush because that is the primary solvent for what we're trying to work with here. Briefly about the airbrushes, I happen to be using an Iwata Eclipse. I like the Iwata brand a lot. I do not sell airbrushes currently, but I'm working on that. I have an Iwata Neo Air mini compressor. This works really well if you can get your hands on. You could also get an Iwata Neo airbrush. It's a little bit cheaper. A really good airbrush. Basically, this is a two-stage airbrush with the trigger. If I push the trigger down, it sprays air only. If I pull the trigger back, the color will start to flow. Right? So I can start the air, and then I can start adding color instead of just being a one and done where you press the button and everything goes. All right. That gives me an enormous amount of control. So I can start the air and only pull it back a very small amount, and only a very small of color should come out. The one thing that you have to watch out, especially on the cheaper airbrushes, is their potential to spit. If your color is too thick, if your brush is not clean, if your air pressure and hand motions are not clean and precise, your airbrush can spit the color, which is not necessarily a good thing. So I want to test out everything. I want to test out the performance of this brush, make sure it is spraying nicely. Best way to do that is to first spray a solvent. So all I'm doing, you can kind of see it's off. There's air flowing. Pull back the trigger and you can see that very small stream of alcohol running through. It's running pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Spray on my paper towel. I want to see, you probably can't see it, but I can see the wetness. It's giving me a really nice, consistent flow. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that, the quality of the cleanliness of my airbrush. Now, I'm going to start off with one of my blues. Got two blue colors, cobalt and indigo, and we're going to start with one. Doesn't matter which one. Just want to make sure that I have all of that alcohol shaken out. I'm going to start with the indigo, which is a slight bit lighter. We're just going to put a little bit into the cup. I need to get one of my airbrush holders. The little holder on the compressor broke off, and I can't set the brush down when it's got color in it now. All right. So the other advantage of having this piece of cardboard is I can test my flow. All right. And if I'm wider, if I'm pulling that brush farther away, I'm getting a much wider band of color. If I get in really close, I can get a very small, precise line. Okay, and I'm only pulling the trigger back a very small amount. So this is something that you want to play with. You want to dial in your airbrush to your own finger pressure. Just because something works for me doesn't mean it necessarily will work for somebody else. But practice. Don't just say, all right, I got all this stuff and it's set up and I'm just going to spray color on my project, and you run a risk of ruining things if you do that. So I'm trying really hard not to ruin things. I'm good at ruining things. So I'm going to try really hard to only spray the blue inside the dish portion. I'm going to be fairly random. I'm not going to be super heavy. I don't have to spray everywhere. I'm not worried about overspray. If I get overspray on the rim, I don't care. I'm trying not to have blops or obvious issues. Rotate the piece as necessary. I want things to be kind of random, not super heavy, because I can always come back. I can always come back and do a little bit more if I need to. All right, so I've randomly applied some of the indigo. Not exactly high artwork there, right? So this is not something I need to be a high precision artist about. All right, so I just poured off some of my excess. Shake up my cobalt a little bit. Make sure that the cup is empty. So I've just sprayed onto my paper towel. It's right there, just spraying it out, making sure it's empty. I'm not going to worry about cleaning that because I started with a lighter color and I'm going to a darker color. What's left in the cup shouldn't affect the tone much, if anything. All right, it's simply not necessary for me to clean if I'm going every time. It's not necessary for me to clean every time if I'm going from a lighter color to a darker color. And then the other thing is, whenever you're working with any liquid, always put the cap back on before you do anything else, because you will knock it over, and when you do, it's going to go everywhere. All right, so we are going to add some of this second color. We're going to go in between. We might go across some of the existing. I don't want to color everything, and quite honestly, I don't know where my snowflakes are going to end up when I put the stencils on. So I'm just kind of giving myself some decent coverage, not super heavy everywhere, little random, not filling in everything. Less is more, and the more control I have with that application, the better off everything is going to be. That I'm not ending up with really heavy blops unless I specifically want them to be really heavy blops. All right, and then, oh, morning, Renan and Rosie are going outside. Yep, there's Rosie. Rosie joined the live, yay! It's because she doesn't have thumbs and can't type in the chat. All right, so I just dumped the residue back in there. We're gonna spray out the excess onto the paper towel. And now, because I'm gonna stop with the airbrush for a couple of moments, I wanna go ahead and clean, okay? Super simple. Just got a bottle of denatured alcohol. I know that because the bottle says DNA, and I like squirting off the outside any drips or anything excess on the outside of the cup or on the brush, and then I will spray some into the cup and kind of shake it around, dump that out, and then spray some in, shake it around, and then spray it into my milk carton right onto that wad of paper towel. And I change out the paper towel maybe once a year. It's not a huge deal. It's not something I have to do often. All right, sprayed a little bit more in there. Okay, you can see that it's not a very, there's still a little blue in there, but there's not a lot. Okay, so this is almost clean enough to set aside and go on from there. The really cool thing about any of the alcohol-based dyes is if I don't do a super job of cleaning, I may be able to recover from that simply by flushing it out with denatured alcohol the next time I go back to work. All right, so it's not super necessary to hammer out the cleaning. I don't have to be super clean in the middle of a project. I don't have to be super clean when I'm done. It's better if I'm super clean. It's better if I deal with this properly when I'm done using it, but it's not 100% necessary. Now, I'm going to go get an airbrush stand while the plate continues to dry, and then we will start applying the stencils. All right, Jeff Peters is probably still giggling, and it has to do with hanging chads. And if you're old enough to, well, if you're our age and have voting experience, you might get that particular reference. Oh goodness, let's see. All right, there's that glass thing. So I'll show you that. And there is my other stand. All right, so I've got an airbrush stand, and I've got one of those glass airbrush cleaning devices. We can talk about that. You don't have to have them. I like having a stand just because it will allow me to holster my airbrush, and I can deal with the color much easier, much safer, much cleaner. I can holster it on the top. I can use the little slip in and hold it there. I can use this in the middle of a project. It's not as stable as if I'm going back and forth with filling the color, but I can kind of angle it out there. I can also have other airbrushes that can be dropped into that upper holding point. I've got mine set up with a quick change. So if I want to swap out brushes, go to a different needle diameter or whatever, a different quality brush, or just have a number of colors lined up all at the same time, I can use that quick change and not have to mess with much of anything. And then here is that glass. It's encased in a rubber sleeve, but that jar is glass because it's more resistant to solvents, and it's not as likely to etch when I'm spraying my cleaning solution inside. I can use that as an airbrush holder if I want. I can spray into there. There should be a filter there, which I've managed to lose because of course you do. But like I said, this makes me nervous. I am a klutz, and I am more likely to break that. So we're going to set that aside and keep it out of the way. Oh, Doug joined us. Yay! There's Doug. Hey, Doug, what's going on? All right. Anyway, all right, so this is probably dry enough. Again, it's alcohol-based dye. It should dry fairly quickly. I'm going to go ahead and pull my chuck real quick. All right, I need a chuck wrench. Pull that off. Yay. Okay, now the big question is, what did I do with that wrench? It should be here. Doug, where's my wrench? You were over here recently. You should know. Okay, no clue. No clue where the wrench is. Let's go look over. Let's go look over here. Oh, I may have taken it with me to the folk school. Yep, there it is. I did. I took my chuck wrench with me to the folk school. That needs to come out. All right, spindle's locked, chuck wrench, quick pop, unwind. I don't necessarily need to take this off the lathe, but I do want to do that for the video. So I want you guys to be able to see what we're working on. And I'm looking at the wood grain and I'm trying to figure out what the best orientation from my perspective would be. Just because sometimes you can use that grain pattern, since we're using reasonably translucent dyes. Sometimes I can utilize that grain to enhance the pattern. So because the grain is all running like this, these little curves running from here to here, I'm kind of thinking I want to line up my snowflakes along that curve line to make it look like it's like the wind is blowing, because you'll still be able to see some of that grain underneath when the black is applied and everything is finished. So I want to do I want to be a little bit more strategic with the placement of my stencils because of that. Now we're doing the snowflakes. Let's get the new sheet. All right, so here's my new sheet. Okay, so Guy said that the airbrush stand, and the glass cleaner are available from Harbor Freight. This is true. Get them from lots of other places, but it does not have a power cord, so it should be safe to purchase from Harbor Freight. Now, I'm going to start with a larger snowflake, and I'm not going to do one of the big ones simply because of the size of the piece. But I'm going to do one of these second largest, and I'm just going to peel that off. Just like yo. Need to make sure that you can see what I'm doing. Trying not to handle it any more than absolutely necessary. And I'm going to put that down here. And I'm going to have it so that it's right there at the edge, with maybe a little piece going over the edge. And I'm very carefully working it down. I don't want there to be a bubble in the stencil. I don't want there to be a bubble. The other thing you have to pay attention to is the simple fact that we're working on a curved surface most of the time. Stencils are flat. Yeah, they are stretchable to an extent, but you have to pay attention to that. You got to pay a lot of attention to that, because if you end up with a bubble in the stencil, your top color can go underneath, and that can make it look wrong. Okay, you may not be happy. And I want to press it down reasonably well, just using the tip of my finger just to smooth that down. And I'm going to grab the next size down. All right, we're going to put that right there. Press that down. I'm going to grab another one of that. Next size down. Be very careful as you peel these off, because if you're too aggressive, you can rip them. You know that these were cut on a stencil cutting device, and they were cut in a manner that they did not disconnect completely, so that they don't move around during the cutting process. If you've never worked with a stencil cutting device before, they don't usually cut everything. They leave a hanging chad, right, Jeff? They leave a hanging chad on there in order to keep them stuck to your sheet. All right, so this is one of the much smaller ones. I'm moving it over to the side. I'm trying not to have them too even. I'm trying to have them a bit more random. Anthony asked a question. Guy, if you can answer this one for me, is there a particular name for the glass cleaning container? I think if you go on Harbor Freight and you just go to the airbrush section, you should be able to find it. I could be wrong, but if somebody wants to jump on Harbor Freight real quick and let me know if there's a specific name for that. All right, so just another one of the small ones. I'm going to grab the third medium guy, and then one more small, and we'll be done with this. Super simple. We're going to put that there. All right, then I'll do another small one right in there. All right. Okay. So there's the last one we're going to do. I'm pretty happy with that. Kind of random, kind of asymmetrical. I have an odd number of snowflakes, which it's always better to do odd numbers when you're doing something like this, and it's also better to have the visual weight on one side different from the visual weight on the other side. And this is actually something that I learned when I was a retail florist for 25 years, that you can, by changing the visual weight, so I've got the largest snowflake here, and I've got mediums and smalls out here. I can direct the eye down and around, that everybody looking at it, they're shooting their vision down and across the piece from that smaller section with the wider gaps down to that heavier section with that larger snowflake. That's my final focal point. And by doing something like this, especially when we're working with an uneven number of pieces, it really does make for a much nicer overall composition. Tom said he was on Harbor Freight and he didn't see it. I can probably post something later, that I'll go ahead and look for it. Anthony's asking about the trigger airbrush, and Jeff Peters. I know Jeff Peters likes to use that. It's more of a pistol grip type thing. Because of my hands and because of my experience, I personally don't like them, but that is neither here nor there. It just means I don't prefer those. I prefer the single index finger, and again, it's probably because of my overall experience that this is really good for me to use, whereas that pistol grip, for me personally, really isn't. Anyway, let's go to that long shot once again. Mary Alice says she thinks they're called cleaning pots. Airbrush cleaning pots. Could be right. Could be good. All right, so we're going to kick the blue colors out of the way, and we are going to grab the black. So last color is the black. I've got the black right there. Before I do that, I need to find an X-Acto knife, because that's the last tool that I will need in order to finish this project. And again, that's hiding somewhere. So I've got an old X-Acto knife. It's not my favorite. All right, so we're using the airbrush holder. I've shaken up the black just a little bit. We're going to dump some into the hopper. Brennan's coming back in, Rosie's being particular. All right. Okay. Lathe back on. Again, we're running about 120 RPM. I've got my black loaded into the airbrush. And I'm going to do most of my spraying on the far side of center. Let's talk about that briefly. Turn that back off again. If I spend most of my time spraying on the left side of the plate, I risk accidentally airbrushing behind. It's very easy to airbrush behind if I'm working here, okay? It's very challenging for me to go behind the plate if I'm going basically from the center to the right. I can go off that right edge as much as I want, and it won't interfere. It won't create other colors in places that I don't want the other colors. All right. So we're just running black. Trying really hard not to make a spiral on the surface, because I'm going to do a contrasting something over that texture, and I'm kind of rethinking the liming wax. I think I might just go ahead and use the gilding cream. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I haven't decided yet. Maybe I'll dry brush. That might be good. Okay, I don't want to go super heavy, and I also don't want to let it stop and sit. If I spray super heavy, especially over those stencils, it could create runs. So I'm inspecting, I'm making sure that I'm happy with the coverage, and then I'm going to turn it right back on and let that rotate at that low rate of speed while I go back and clean my airbrush once again. Okay, because I'm effectively done with this project for now, and the next step, once that color is dry enough, is I will remove the stencils and show off what is sitting on the surface underneath. Super cool, super simple, really makes for a neat effect. Get those colors out the way. Whoops. All right, because my last color was dark, I want to go ahead and do a decent cleaning job on this. So again, we're going to start by flushing everything with the denatured alcohol. Okay. All right, so Mary Alice found those cleaners on Walmart. Let me put that post up. There. She found them on Walmart. They're called cleaning pots, and the specific one that she has a hanger, so it's called a cleaning pot with hanger. It does contain your overspray fairly nicely. And maybe if you weren't working on the lathe bed on something like this and you were utilizing the airbrush, maybe having that glass pot might be a good option or a better option. Again, I'm always concerned that I'm going to drop it, knock it over, make a tremendous mess simply because of who I am. I also got a little bit of color on my holder, so I'm going to clean that off with some of my overspray. Because we're working with denatured alcohol, everything will evaporate reasonably quickly. Whoops. Spray clean. All right, then we're going to set that aside. Come back to that after we do our next piece. All right. Close up the denatured alcohol, and we are ready to move forward with this one. Get that out of the way. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to very carefully remove the stencils. And I don't want to wait until the thing is completely dry. I don't want to wait until everything is dry if I don't have to. Simply because if I wait too long, I might inadvertently end up pulling some of the color away. Okay, does that make sense? So what I want to do is I want to get rid of these as quickly as possible. Now, if I have a sheet where I have the original stencil sheet where I've got the a clean surface, realistically, I could very carefully remove those stencils and I could apply them back on that initial sheet, and I could take a little denatured alcohol and I could very carefully clean those off a little bit and reuse them if I wanted to. I held back a couple when I was doing my metallic paint and just stuck them on here. I'll see if I can reuse these on that next project piece and see if that doesn't work. Best way that I've been shown how to remove these stencils is with an X-Acto knife. So I've just got a little X-Acto knife that's an old blade. I want to make sure that I'm not touching any of that active dye that's still wet in some spots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the very tip of the X-Acto knife, and I'm going to very carefully lift up a section, and then using one of my other fingers, I'm going to very gently apply pressure against the top surface of the blade until I have lifted enough of that stencil to peel it carefully away. Take your time. All right, so there's my stencil, and for fun I'm just going to stick that right back down and see if I can reuse that at a later time. Take your time doing this. Don't rush. Again, try really hard not to scratch the die. Try really hard not to touch the active surface. On some of these smaller guys, it gets a little challenging to not tear the small stencils when you're trying to lift them. Again, just take your time. Okay, that's 3. All right, that one broke. Somebody outside on the sidewalk doing something. That's why Rosie's alerting. Okay, there's that one. 2 more. Take your time. Don't rush. And we got that one right in the center, which is a little challenging to get to. The biggest thing that you got to pay attention to is not scratching the colors with your X-Acto knife as you're trying to get underneath those stencils. Keep that blade flat. Don't go down with the point. Don't try to scrape. I'm trying to sneak the point, the very fine point of that blade underneath the stencil and lift it. All right, and again, it's still wet, but there you go. There's my snowflakes. I've got dark blue, I've got darker blue, I've got lighter blue, I've got some bare wood showing through, I've got a really fun grain pattern, so when this is done it will be displayed like this. Really nice. I'm really happy, and there you go. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to put some kind of contrast over the texture. A lot of times I would just use a liming wax. I've kind of made that difficult for myself to do, so I'm going to do one of the Chroma Gilt creams. And because I've got very large fingers, I don't want to use my finger. I want to use a small dry brushing technique. So I'm going to sneak back behind the curtain because I had some dry brushes that were appropriate. And I thought I left them back here. Maybe I moved them. I think I moved them. Always with the moving. All right, that's a little bit bigger. Yeah, you can always count on not being able to find the stuff that you want at exactly the moment that you want it. All right, so I also had a piece of cardboard. I do a lot of work with cardboard, just cardboard scraps. There it is. All right, so I've got a piece of cardboard here. All right, dry brushing. The process of dry brushing is an age-old painting technique. The most effective way to do dry brushing is by utilizing a very stiff bristled brush and a piece of cardboard or a piece of like a brown paper bag. That I want that heavier paper. I want the ability to scrub out my color when I'm working on something like this. I don't want to load my brush. I want to scrub that color back out, so the brush, while it does have some color, is not super heavy. I don't have a lot of control over, I don't have a lot of room to work. I have a lot of room to ruin things, and I'm probably going to change up what I did. I will, after I apply that white, I will probably go back with the parting tool on the outside edges and clean that up to make to create a natural wood space. I think that's going to give me the best overall look. I need to find my white chroma gilt, Nordic bronze, copper, blue, Saxon gold, Egyptian yellow. Watch it be the last one I touch. Viking silver, other gold. Second to last one. There you go. All right. There is my white chroma gilt. Now, there's a number of ways that I can work with this material. If I was working on a bigger surface, I would put on a glove and I would squirt a little of the chroma gilt out, or put a little bit on my thumb, and I would use my thumb as my palette, and I would use my index finger as my applicator. So I would squish some of that material onto my index finger, and then I would very gently, very carefully rub that across the texture. Because I am working on a very small surface and did not plan it out any better than I did, I don't have a lot of room, and I don't want to have to go back in and clean things up after the fact if I don't need to. So like I said, I'm working with the chroma gilt white. I think I've got 12 of the chroma gilt colors. I've got most of the chroma gilt colors, and I've got a very small stiff bristled acrylic brush. I'm going to pull off some of that chroma gilt, load up my brush, and then I'm going to scrub it back out, and then I'm very carefully, so the brush is moving before it makes contact with the textured surface. I want to scrub this across the texture. I don't want the white to go down into the texture. I am just using that dry brush to highlight the surface of the texture without filling in the valleys. So the valleys, that's the black, the surface is going to be white, and this is one reasonably simple method of applying this product. Like I said, the big problem with what I've done here is I didn't give myself enough room to really do these techniques properly, so I'm adjusting on the fly. It is what it is. You know, sometimes things seem like a really good idea. Hey, I'm going to try it this way, and you find out, that might not have been the best option for this specific piece, but that's okay because we can work around it. Simply need to take my time. I'm gently scrubbing sideways, starting to get a little overage, and that's what you have fingers for, getting a little overage there. Again, techniques like the dry brush application, I've been doing this for years and years and years, mostly with acrylics. If you follow David Curley or Greg Gallegos, they do a lot of dry brushing with acrylic colors and make some phenomenal textural pieces with some fabulous colors. It's just a really good technique to have available. And the best way to do it is with one of these stiff bristle brushes, and I've got a variety of stiff bristle brushes and understand that you're trying really hard not to fill the gaps in the texture. We're just going to run this around. I'm only going to do one coat. I might go back later after we're done and do a second. I want to get this applied and hit it with the parting tool and move on to the next project. Keep cleaning as I go. I can always go back and wipe. Push come to shove, if I need to go back and fix something where I've done too much of the white, or in trying to rub over gilding away, trying to clean up some mess, if I have worked down some of that black base color. Chromacraft also sells dye markers, so all 15 colors just in a really nice marker form. I do not have inventory on those yet. Those will come in my next shipment. I brought in some as samples to test out for a couple of things, and think it's a really good product to also have as part of this line, and I will be bringing them in soon. Right now I don't have the markers, and that's okay. But I could use that marker. I could go right back on the lathe. I could use that marker and touch up that black if I need to go back and do that. But anyway, you get the idea. I'm highlighting that texture. Again, I will do at least a second coat, simply because I feel it's going to need that. But I'll do that later on my own time. For now, I want to put this right back on the lathe. Go to the long shot so you can see what I'm doing. Get the gilding cream and stuff out of the way. I need a bigger bench when I'm doing stuff like this. There's not a lot of room, especially for going back and forth between the color and the turning. Oh, and we were talking about X-Acto knives. I found the knife that I prefer. It's the brand is Excel. It's an American company. Their blades are a little bit thicker than standard X-Acto blades. Super comfortable grip. It's a rubberized grip. It's a little bit thicker knife body, and I find it really good to use for stuff like this. It's what I prefer. If the X-Acto is what I'm able to find, then that's what I'm going to use, but I prefer the Excel simply because of what it is. All right, next thing I want to do is I want to find my parting tool. I've got a thin kerf parting tool right here. Carter & Son 16th inch asymmetric parting tool. I really like this parting tool a lot, and I'm going to use it on the outside of my textures just to give myself a nice frame. Make sure the spindle lock is unlocked. Get some speed back. I want to use a very small amount of pressure. Not going very deep. I'm just going deep enough to make a clean groove. And just by doing that, there's some hanging chads that I'll need to deal with. I need to go a little bit deeper on that outside edge. Just by doing that, I have really enhanced that rim coloring, and I'm really quite happy with that. I might try to sneak in there with a little sandpaper or something, just because I can. But that gives me a really nice finish look. Okay, and it's just a standard parting tool. Happens to be a 16th inch, and that's okay. All right, so first project effectively done. When everything dries and I'm done with all of the final processing, I will spray this front surface with a lacquer. I've been working with the Chromacraft acrylic lacquer. It comes in both spray can and brushable, or airbrushable as it were. It is a spray lacquer, but it is acrylic based, not lacquer based, and it is super fast drying. I don't want to put it on until all of my color is dry. So this is probably going to sit until tomorrow. I want to make sure that everything is nice and dry before I apply that final finish. I want to make sure that I'm happy with all of my texture. And like I said, I'm going to go back and do another round of that white on the texture. And then I will flip it over and finish the bottom coal jaws or Longworth chuck or something, and we'll go from there. Oh, yay, yay, Tim Wadley just joined us, yay. Tim says I missed a spot. Dude, I've missed more than a spot, so hush. Stop helping. All right, so we're going to set this on the other side of the shop real quick and move on to our second project. Second project, I want to do a version of this. I want to do the acrylic, metallic acrylic snowflakes using the stencil windows, but I want to do that on a black background. So we're going to chuck up the second bowl. Oh, I need to, this is actually the 1-inch Hornung jaws because I had a much smaller tenon on. Get that out of the way. If you were wondering, yes, I did design these chuck jaws. These chuck jaws are designed specifically to hold a 1-inch tenon. They are the Nova 1-inch Hornung jaws, SKU number 6090. I've got at least 4 sets, possibly 6 sets still in stock right now. If you need them, I have them here in St. Louis. They are active on the website. If you go to www.thewalnutlog.com. All right, so we're going to use this piece. Okay, we're going to use that piece, and I want to do... I don't think I'm going to put any texture on the rim. I might just go back and cut it with the parting tool. I don't think I'm going to put any texture on this one because of the technique that I'm planning on doing. I do want to hit it with a paper towel, make sure I get all of my sanding dust removed. Just to keep it simple. All right. Get my big acrylic sheet back up here for protection. My cardboard color deflector, again, back up for protection. Get this piece out of the way. Move that there. Okay. Oh, flip that around. It goes that way. All right, we're going straight to black. I'm not going to do anything else on the base underneath. We're going straight to black. I see a round plate and I want to paint it black. Pour that in the little hopper. Really, you should be wearing gloves when you're doing this. My wife will fuss later, I'm sure. Mostly because I need to be fussed at. All right, so let's see, we're going to go. So I've just got it loaded with some dye. Speed back down to about 150, 135 is where we ended up. Spray onto my paper towel, make sure I'm not blowing alcohol first. Start in the center. Wide spray. Keep going back and forth, try really hard not to leave big spirals. You might also consider wearing a respirator when you're doing airbrush work, or when you have to go back and blow your nose, possibly the following morning. The Kleenex is going to be startlingly colored, which is not necessarily a good thing. All right, I'm going to stop, rotate by hand. Pretty happy with the general coverage. We're going to go ahead and get that rolling again. I'm going to clean out my airbrush while that's drying. Back to the overhead. There. I do a lot of overspraying, a lot of cleaning spraying just on that paper towel, and that's why I do it. That's why I've got the paper towel there, is so I can keep things clean and flowing and not have to worry about switching back and forth between what I'm working on and what I need to have clean. I'm really doing this to waste time. I want that dye to dry a little faster. Okay, it's mostly done, and I didn't go super heavy this time, so hopefully it'll dry out pretty quickly. All right, we're going to let that sit with a little alcohol in it, just cause. All right, Tim's asking a question because he showed up late. This is what happens when you show up late, Tim. You knew what time. You knew what time. I don't care if you were working. Should have been here. All right, Tim wants to know what we're working with. We are working with Chromacraft wood dye. It's a Nick Agar line, reasonably fast drying, alcohol based. The brand new product line at thewalnutlog.com, and that's what we're working with for most of these projects. All right, the next thing I want to do, and hopefully this continues to dry reasonably quickly, is I want to pop the chuck off. All right. Still a little wet down in the center, so we might avoid that a little bit. Realistically, I could get a hair dryer, and I could dry that hair dryer, small heat gun, things of that nature. Obviously, I don't use a hair dryer for anything other than potentially dealing with drying things, mostly because I don't have any hair. There's no hair to dry. There's no need to have the dryer. But sometimes, like right now, it'd be super helpful. And I thought I had it laying out. I don't know where it ended up going. If I can find it real quick, I do want to hit that with a dryer. I want that to dry up just a little bit more. It'll make for a better finished project. You know, I'm not just trying to demo. I'm trying to make stuff that I can then turn around and sell myself. Not just another pretty face. I have to earn a living here. Anyway, all right. So I'm in a position where I cannot get to where that dryer might be, so I'm not going to worry about it. We're just going to go with what we got and hope for the best. Hope for the best. All right, so I'm going to avoid those sections if at all possible. Yes, the stencils can potentially lift wet color. All right, so I need to be real careful when I'm dealing with residual undried color. We're going to work around it as much as we can. Okay, so the next product that we're going to use is not something I'm carrying yet, but it will be something that I should have in a couple of weeks. I am in the process of becoming a Joe Sonia paint dealer. So the Joe Sonia Cosmic Cloud paints, they also have pearls. They also have a fantastic line of metallics. I love their metallic paints. They're just fantastic acrylic metallic paint, and I will be bringing those in. That's why I want to go ahead and show you how to use that here, utilizing the Chromacraft stencils. first thing I want to do is I want to line out some of my stencils, get some of the window patterns on there, the open ones. I'll actually start with some of these that I used yesterday. All right, so these are ones that I used yesterday. They should be plenty sticky enough. I'm going to go ahead and lay them down. And again, because I'm working on a really curved surface, if this was more of a platter, it might be a little bit easier. So I'm having to be really careful with what I'm doing here in order to get that to lay down nicely on that pretty strong curve. That one there. I'll go ahead and put that one there. And because of what they are, because of the size, I might need to cut them down. Just a regular pair of scissors make that job super simple. Just cut them down like so. And then the hard part, because I don't have any fingernails to speak of, is getting that stencil to lift off of the backer paper. And again, like I said, I don't mess with the little dots that are left on the inside simply because I don't want to have to deal with something that small. And if I put it on crooked, it's going to look funny. Very carefully lay these down. If I get a bubble, I want to try to make sure that it is not along the inside edge of that pattern. And I'm sticking them down pretty good. Because I'm working with an acrylic paint, it's not going to be as it's not going to require me being as careful when I'm applying my color. I don't have to be worried about the paint bleeding per se, simply because of what the paint is. It's not anywhere near as likely as there might be if I am dealing with one of the dyes. Okay, if that makes sense. And Wadley said something. I'll have to go and look here in a moment. I'm sure he's helping. I'm sure he's helping a lot. Okay. And because I know some of this is still a little damp, I want to be very careful that I'm not making smears myself. It's very easy to do. I can cause more damage than necessary. And if you've done any work with me, you know I can cause an enormous amount of damage without really paying attention to it. All right, so I'm thinking I want to put one of these little guys out on the rim. And if anybody has any good tips or tricks on lifting the stencils after they've trimmed them down, no, I'm not going to grow fingernails simply because I don't like that. That probably is the best answer. It's not a good enough answer. All right, so I'm going to put one out here on the rim. I'm going to line it up on the wide flat spot, and then I want to make sure I really tuck it down where the rim detail comes into effect. And I want to make sure that all of the little sections of that right in there, I want to make sure all of the little sections of the snowflake are stuck down as good as possible so that I have the best chance of a reasonably clean painting job. Now, I could use the positive stencils. I could be doing the positive stencils and then painting around them. I'm choosing to use the windows and painting inside of them simply because I think it will give me a much more much more interesting effect. Going the other way, I'd probably have to put the colors on the entire surface, where the majority of the plate would be silver or gold or a combination, and the openings would be the snowflake, whatever the snowflake color, whether it's black or natural, or I could do all of this just on bare wood. I don't have to have a base color. I'm choosing to use a base color because that's the effect that I specifically want for this project. And I like a lot of snowflakes. So because of that, it takes just a little more prep time. I'm still kind of staying away from that center section because of the wetness. But if I do it right, it really should end up being a cool looking piece, And because I'm using stencils and paint, if I go through all this and I decide I want more after I'm done, or if I want one more and it needs to be right there, wherever there it has to be, I can always go back and continue. That I'm not limited on anything. I can always go back. Because it's acrylic paint, realistically, I could go back after my final finish is on here. All right, so I'm going to stop there for now, just so that I can get some of this color on, and then we can lift the stencils and see what it looks like and see if I need to do more on the rim or something. And again, I can do that later on my own time. In order to apply the acrylic paint, move that over here. I just got a regular plastic painting palette. It's just 4 cups. I use this for brushing paints. I use it for sponging paints. I use it for a lot of things. For the application on this piece specifically, I'm going to go ahead and use a small sponge brush, sponge on a stick. Tim, what do we do with this? We pounce. All right, so I've got my sponge. I'm going to start with the silver. Because it's an acrylic paint, I want to give it a fair amount of shaking. I'm going to squirt some down into one of my paint cups. I can always add more. I'm holding on to the chuck because I don't want things to move around. And I'm going to take that sponge and pounce it around. I don't want to be super heavy, but I don't want to be super light either. And I like doing this in a manner where I've got these two tones working together. I normally take the silver and apply it to the surface on the left because I've trimmed down some of these stencils. I need to be careful that I'm not applying color on the bare wood surface. I want it to be confined to the stencil surface. And I will pay attention to that, but I want to put paint on all of my snowflakes, all in the same orientation to begin with. So all of the silver is going to be on the left side, and all of the gold is going to be towards the right side. And I can do as much or as little per snowflake. I like good coverage. I like texture, so that's why I'm pouncing. I'm just up and down applying this so that I create these bubbles or these textures. Because visual texture, especially when you're working with a paint, it can be really cool. That it just enhances the overall appearance of your project. And you can buy these sponges on a stick at any hobby store. So Michael's, Hobby Lobby, Amazon, Dick Blick, Jerry's Artorama, pick an art supply place, any art supply place. Did I mention Amazon? You can get them on Amazon. I was going to sell them. I'm thinking about bringing in some. I haven't quite decided. All right, so I've got the silver applied on all of my little snowflake stickers. I'm going to switch to the gold. I could clean up this. I could clean this up. I could go inside and wash it out. I could grab another one if I wanted to. I'm simply going to load up with the gold because I'm applying the gold on top of wet silver so that it blends better, right? And again, I'm trying really hard to be very careful and not get any of the paint onto the bare wood surface. Because I'm applying the gold to the silver while the silver is still wet, I'm gonna have a better chance of blending. Now I went a little heavy right there. I might go back and do some more silver on that one after I finish applying the rest of the gold. I'm not super happy with that particular spot. Whoops. And I went on the paint. All right, so I just ruined that. I'm gonna have to go back and figure out how to clean that up. A little sandpaper and a little of the black marker should take care of it. I don't want to mess with any of that though until it's dry. Take your time. Maybe don't do this technique while you're talking to an audience. I mean, it happens, but you know, the more it happens, the more I got to go back and fix. I could drop a little snowflake stencil in there and probably cover it up that way. I'll figure out what I need to do when everything's dry. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm gonna pounce out some of the excess gold. I'm gonna go right back to the silver because I don't like the hard lines there. And just a wet on wet on wet on wet. I can go back and forth. I can blend these in a little bit better. Make my seams less of a seam, or at least seem like less of a seam. Womp womp. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with that in general. Set that aside. I'm going to very carefully lift my stencils. I'm going to grab the two that are the easiest to access first. All right, then I'm going to go back to I'm going to grab that X-Acto knife, the bigger one that I prefer. You can wash the sponge on a stick. I'm done with that. Thank you. All right, so just continue lifting the stencils. Carefully so I don't scratch the surface and so that I don't drag my fingers over anything. Isn't that a cool technique? Yeah, make sure you pay attention to how much excess paint you end up having on your own hands in the event that you smear something. All right, there you go. There's technique number 2. Isn't that cool? That's cool.
Can
No, I think we're about done. Okay. All right, 2 projects, 2 up, 2 down. Yeah, Tim asked if I was not doing any sway. I did sway in other demos a long time ago. Wood turning place far, far away. All right, and you can see some residual. It's not residual from the sticker. It's where the sticker lifted some of that black because it was not dry yet. That will even out when I apply my lacquer. Not a big deal. That's what happens when you try to rush. Still a little wet in the center. I think I want another snowflake in there and maybe 1 or 2 on the rim later. And then I've got to clean up that gold blop right there where I got careless. But it's another way to utilize the stencils. It's just a really cool thing to do. Okay. It's super simple, super effective. You don't have to have a bunch of artistic talent. You don't have to know how to draw or anything. You can utilize these stencils or tools. Use them because it makes for a really cool looking project. All right. So that's the original snowflake. We've got the acrylic snowflakes. I want to go back and I want to do more, and I want to clean up my mess. And then, and I think that's it. We've run for almost 2 hours. We run 1 hour and 20 minutes, and it's been a lot of fun. I'm really happy with the way the technology has functioned. That's been really cool. I like this chat thing when I'm doing a live. Mary Alice has used masking tape to separate the masking film from the backing. Oh yeah, okay. So using masking tape to lift the stencil from the backer. That is possible. I think once I get that initial separation, I should be fine. It's just I'm dealing with sausage links at the end of my arms, and I don't have nails, and it gets a little challenging. Anyway, if anybody have any questions, anybody want to dump any questions into the chat real quick, that'd be great. Whether you're on Facebook or whether you're on YouTube, the tube of views would be swell. Everybody happy with the way everything was running? Was my audio good? Are you cool with the chat pop-up feature? Because that's kind of fun. Just being able to pull comments from the chat and throw them into the vMix. Other thing I want to remind you about is you can go to my website for a lot of this stuff. I can put in my website in chat. So you can go to my website. You can click on ChromaCraft. That takes you to the ChromaCraft USA page. We have these are the products that we currently have in stock. I've got all 15 of the wood dyes. I've got 10 of the chroma gilt colors. I've got I think I've got 10 different stencil pack designs, butterflies and dragonflies and snowflakes and stars and lightning and some other cool stuff. I've got a couple of the finishes, the spray lacquer, the brush on or wipe on can of lacquer. They've got a really nice, they call it water reducible urethane. So it's a urethane finish, kind of a satin finish. It's not a high gloss. It's a medium or low gloss, and it is ridiculously durable. And it has been recommended to use that over on top after you apply your chroma gilt. So especially if you're doing something like Nick Agar's Viking Bowl, let's say that if you're doing Nick Agar's Viking Bowl, you can use that urethane and use that as a top coat to protect the chroma gilt on the outside. You know, you did the Viking silver on the outside. You can use that urethane as your finish, and it'll give you a really nice durable finish without adding a lot of gloss, which may mess with the illusion that it's a piece of silvered metal. And so that's just another really good product. And then in addition to the Mylan's liming wax, I also have the Chromacraft liming wax as well. And yeah, there you go. So I appreciate you guys all hanging out with me. Tom, thank you. I appreciate you being here. Everybody, Tom just happened to comment. There it is. Tom just happened to comment, which was nice. And these are going to be left on both my Walnut Log Facebook page. The YouTube Live will be saved on my YouTube channel. Like I said, I'm going to try to do Monday Methods every week as much as possible from now on. So I will be doing, some will be turning, some will be product facing, just showing you tips and tricks and techniques. If you have any topics that you want me to cover specifically, let me know. Either send me a private message on Facebook or a private message on YouTube. That's great. Or contact me through email or text. My personal information is on my website, which is www.thewalnutlog.com. And yeah, and if you're interested in any of these products, I currently have good inventory on all of the Chromacraft that we talked about today, plus some other really cool stuff. So thank you all for hanging out with me. I will talk to you all next Monday. It will end up being probably closer to noon next Monday. I've got, I actually have an appearance. I agreed to do an artist talk to a group. So Monday Methods might be in the morning next week, but I think I'm going to try to stick around and do these mostly like at 2 o'clock on Mondays, unless I have a conflict like I know I will next week. So thank you all for hanging out. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Take care. Go out and turn something cool.